Hi, I'm Georgia. I got sick a little while back and it changed my life forever. And in the past year I've realised that I really kind of need to use mobility aids to get around a lot more. So the question is, what do I choose? Well, I started with a cane, but it wasn't quite enough. I'm still struggling, my knees hurt a lot, so the next step would be a rollator. But then I started losing even more movement, so do I get a rollator and maybe not be able to use it as much, or do I get a wheelchair and then it's either the wheelchair or the cane, fully sitting or fully standing? The answer? Rollz Motion seemed to have it. I picked up the Rollz Motion 2-in-1 because, honestly, I'd seen it online. Same as a lot of you guys, I think. It's really quite popular on Instagram because it looks like nothing else that I've seen. It looks really cool, it's kind of futuristic, it's got flat siding, you get the gist. And it comes in really cool colours. So that's what first drew me to it. So then I went looking to find one, and that's where this comes in. This is an honest review of the Rollz Motion 2-in-1. Now this is technically a review of version 1, but from what I personally can tell, version 2 is more or less the same, but with different colours and a slightly different wheel shape. If that matters to you. So first, the good. It is super lightweight, it's an aluminium frame. If you've ever pushed one of those old school black wheelchairs, you always see them when people come out of hospital, they're hideous. They are heavy, and personally I find them very uncomfortable. So the lightweightness is great for two reasons. One, it's a rollator, you have to push it. If you have muscle weakness, which is probably why you're engaging in using this, unless you have some sort of back problem, the lightweight makes a difference. A lot of rollators are lightweight, but not all wheelchairs are, which makes a difference for people pushing them. So if you're an interable couple, meaning one of you is abled and one of you is disabled, or if you are both disabled but one of you has more strength than the other, this will make a difference. Two, the seat is nicer. A lot of your standard black wheelchairs have that soft canvas seating that just kind of gives when you lean into it. The Rollz Motion has a foam seat. It is covered in a water-resistant canvas. That means that you don't get that super sweaty feeling of being against those soft white vinyls, but it also does mean you don't get as much protection from the rain. So the cover of the seating does come off to be washed should you need it to, which also means you can dry out the foam more effectively if you do get drenched. One of the most interesting things about the Rollz Motion is that it has a very interesting shape. And that's partly because they've gotten rid of the solid frame join on a wheelchair. I'll explain what I mean. Usually between the front and the back wheels you would have a piece of metal that joins them for stability. The Rollz Motion doesn't have that, which I've noticed allows for a little more flexibility. So if you're going over uneven ground, it is slightly less bumpy than a traditional wheelchair, but it's nothing compared to the big, soft-tired off-roading kind that you'd get if you went to the beach. But we have successfully got it across a campfield ground without too much issue. Just watch out for big potholes. The average height recommended for a Rollz Motion user is about 5'3" to 6'3". That means that I'm somewhere in the lower end, being about 5'5". This is great because it means that the seat for me is at a slightly higher than average height for your regular wheelchair, which means my legs are nice and straight and they don't sort of bunch up like that when I sit, which means I get a lot less calf problems. I can sit in it for longer, it makes my legs hurt less, but I imagine if you're on the taller side you're going to have the same problem you'd have with an average chair where your knees come up to your chest. Speaking of the frame, it comes in really interesting colours. The version 1 came in some more unusual colours, so my Cadbury's purple, I think orange, and a few others that I genuinely can't pull from my memory right now. Version 2 comes in a pebble white, a standard black, a very pretty blue, and a dark purple for those of you who don't want to share your love of milk chocolate. I mentioned earlier that the frame is slightly higher because that means the seat's higher. It also comes into use when used as a rollator because it's easier to get onto curbs because the wheels themselves are further off the ground, and that means that you can tilt it back and you don't have to tilt as far, and it's just a nice time all round because I have to put less effort into lifting it. That said, it can also be a little more difficult to get off a curb because you kind of have, it's a bit taller, so it can feel a bit roller coastery at times. On to the interesting bit, transforming. It's a pretty fast transformation. Now, if you choose to walk with the back attached, which you can do, it's simply you pull up the seat, it locks into place, and then you turn the handlebars around. They're fairly adjustable in that you can turn them and they lock in place at the back, and they have several different height settings. They do not have a push button adjuster, which a lot of other rollators have, which means they are more adjustable to your height, but getting it that height regularly if you rotate them a lot can be a little difficult. The transformation itself takes about 2 minutes, it's really fast, and providing you're able to stand for that amount of time, you're okay, or if you're able to walk around your rollator to sit on the seat, you can pull up the back with a person there, but do be aware of their arms as the handles turn outwards, and if they're sat too far back it might just catch them on the back. That just takes a little bit of practice. The other things that it takes to transform are putting the feet straps on, which also are not adjustable. To turn it into a rollator, do the same thing but backwards. Take the footrests off, turn the handles around and set them to your preferred height, and unlatch the back. To take the back off completely, there's a little latch, and then it becomes its own singular piece. This is the only way to get the chair to fold up completely, is to have the back as a separate piece. My partner wishes to put in his 2 cents and says he wishes it had little feet because every time you put it down it does fall over. And it's about the size of average UK airplane carry-on, and it weighs about right, so we actually took ours on a plane and it was quite successful. We just counted it as my main luggage and I had a small bag. To collapse the wheelchair rollator entirely, there's a little red latch on the front of the seat of the rollator, lift that and the whole thing collapses together. It's fairly small, obviously not the smallest because it has a solid seat and it won't go as small as a canvas, but it is very narrow and can easily get through any doorway and into the back of most cars. The brakes are like bike brakes. You squeeze them to put them on, and then there's an extra lock to lock them in place so that you're sturdy and you don't have to keep holding them and put pressure on your wrists. They can be maintained a lot like a bike as well, as the brake system is very similar. But that brings me on to the bad. The brakes are very much like bike brakes, but unfortunately, due to the way it's constructed, I was informed by a bike mechanic that it may be susceptible to rain because the cover may let in water. This is an easy touch-up that you can do with some silicone spray just to help protect it from the wet, but it is something to be aware of. On a similar note, I was also told that the twisting of the handles may eventually put strain on the connection between the bike brake mechanism and the bike brake itself, so it may need maintenance. But on the good side, a bike mechanic should be able to look after them for you, and it would be a maintenance whenever you feel like it. Talking of brakes, the foam on the handles does have the tendency to move, usually when pushed uphill for a long amount of time, but it can be difficult to put them back once they have started moving. So if you're particularly susceptible to hills or using the rollator for extended periods and putting a lot of weight on them, they may slide and it may start to feel a little uncomfortable. As I mentioned earlier, the footrests are unadjustable, so if you have slightly shorter legs to torso height, or if you are particularly tall, you may find them slightly uncomfortable, especially as the seat is more padded than a canvas, so you will be higher up. Along notes of frame and height, the fun colours, while really fun, may show more scratches. You can probably buff out some of the lighter ones with some car polish, but if something big gets damaged, I'm afraid it's gonna stay that way. Colours may be hard to match if they're a custom colour to the brand. When attaching the back, it may be hard to lift or move if you have particularly weak muscle strength in your arms, like I do sometimes. It can feel like a spring system. I'm not sure if it is or if that's just my muscles protesting, but it can be hard to lift in that way, in sort of a biceps curl, if you don't have that kind of strength. It's easy enough to adjust for somebody who has that strength and is easy enough to set in place and leave there, it locks fine. But it's something of note if you intend to use it more as a rollator and only ask somebody to help you on the occasion that you've set it up. I mentioned the height earlier. They do have a smaller height variant, which is about 4'11" to just over 6 foot. For me, I sit right in the middle ground. I don't think the smaller option would work for me. Being 5'5", I would need the leg room and height of the bigger model. Both height variants have a seat width of about 42 centimetres or 17 inches. This means that their average weight capacity is about 125 kilograms. You may notice this isn't plus size friendly. But considering that the brand does have a small height variant, there is a possibility that they may address this in the future, and based on how they seem to be very active on social media and aiming towards younger people, I think this is quite a high likelihood. If you've seen pictures of my rollator wheelchair, you'll notice there is a basket underneath. This is sold separately and would add to the overall price, which would be something to consider if you do want one. Rollz also offers just a rollator option that has an extra big shopping basket on the front if that is something that interests you. Like most wheelchairs, it is best suited to flat ground and dry weather. It can handle a soaking, but you will need to dry off the foam and make sure that the brakes are in good working order afterwards. It can handle hills a little bit easier due to it being lightweight, but I would still avoid them myself. Finally, the price. It's about £800, which is a bit expensive. It is beautifully made and I expect it to last a very long time and to get a lot of work out of it, but if you're on a tighter budget it may be unaffordable. I was lucky and I managed to get mine second hand, it being a version 1, but not everyone is so lucky, and while I think it's a good investment, it is something to consider. All in all, I've had a great time with it. It's been adjustable, I've been able to adjust the brakes to my grip strength, it's been adaptable, it can change heights depending on the day, so if I'm feeling more hunched and more uncomfortable, the handlebars can be lower so that I can use them more easily, or taller and higher if I feel more capable. It's easily adjustable for my partner, and because it's lightweight I'm comfortable with other people using it, not just the strongest people in my family. I've had a great time with it, and I would recommend that if you are truly interested, save up, because I think it's worth it. They really have the market cornered on a supportive wheelchair that is also a rollator. If you are interested more in the rollator side, I would say there are perhaps cheaper options out there for you. All in all, I've had a great time with it, and I look forward to using it every day. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. If you have any queries about the Rollz Motion or any other mobility aids I use or how I get around daily, I post regularly on Instagram at GeorgiaDB, and I'd love to see you there. I hope to post here more often. Let me know what you would be interested in seeing. Bye!